Hello, and welcome to the Pineal podcast. I'm Nick Bell, your dutiful host, and I am joined today by my brother in arms, my partner in the Pineal Tribe, and one of my best friends in the whole world, Björn. How are you, Björn?
Wonderful.
I'd love to hear that.
Even excited.
Even better. This would make for a good call. Now, as usual, when we start these podcasts, we don't have a defined idea. There's no planning gone into the point of discussion. We just wait to see what comes through. We wait to see what comes up, and if it resonates with us both, we explore it. Now, something which is coming up for me in the moment, I think is an interesting place to start. And let me frame it before I say it. So, Bjorn and I, for those who don't know, we're part of a five-person team called the Pineal Tribe. It's an organization we founded a number of years ago. And the primary function of what we do is we create experiences, transformational experiences for people, which help them to unlock and untangle the patterns of limitation they may have built up through their lives so they can self-realize, so they can find themselves, so they can truly tune in to the essence of what makes them the most joyful, or whatever that may be. And the crown jewel, so to speak, in the work that we do, at least from my perspective anyway, is our 2-week retreats. And they're magnificent, and we hold them in different places around the world. Southern Italy is a favorite. The recent one we held in Tenerife, and it was beyond beautiful. So the work that we do in this retreat setting is incredibly deep work. We really support and facilitate people going as far in as is possible to really clean house. Now, there's two sides of what we do at the retreat. If we think about the analogy of mountaineers, when mountaineers are going to climb a mountain, the first thing they do is they establish base camp. Now, base camp is their little space at the foot of the mountain where they have all of their tools, all of the experts watching the GPS and tracking them and whatever else goes into that. And it's very, very important to establish a clean base camp before you go climbing mountains, because otherwise you just run risks. And the way that I see what unfolds at our retreat is that we spend time really working with people to establish a solid base camp in their inner being, a centered, balanced place within their inner geography, a cleaning of it. Now, it doesn't always happen immediately. This works and can sometimes take time. But this is something we try to bring in so that then they have greater access to the mystical experience of climbing mountains. Now, what that means is that they go all around the realm of their inner world and they explore everything. And often they experience life in a way they haven't experienced it, somewhat more intense, somewhat deeper, a lot more profound often. Now, what this creates is a scenario sometimes where in which they have this unbelievable experience for 2 weeks with us on retreat. Then they go back to their ordinary world and they're faced with the triggers and the potential inauthenticity of the life that they'd created prior to finding themselves again. Which means that one of the most important aspects of what we do is guiding and facilitating integration. And this is the topic that I would like us to explore today. Integration. What does it mean? What does it mean in the context of what we do? But also, what does it mean in the context of life? Because you don't have to come to a pineal retreat to have a profound experience. You don't have to come to a pineal retreat to do deep inner work on yourself. If you have these experiences and do these things in your everyday life, then inevitably you're going to shake things up for yourself, create new insights. And if those insights are not properly integrated in your day-to-day existence, then problems can occur. So my invitation, Björn, is that we explore the topic of integration. What does integration mean? Why is it important? What examples are there of not integrating, and where can that lead us? And looking at the notion of integration in different contexts. How does that feel for you?
It's wonderful. And I'll start with a non-notion of not integrating. Like, integration happens. Integration is the function of life that always happens, because integration means finding the balance between your inner state and your outer world. And that is something that happens automatically. Like, you cannot choose not to integrate. The thing that makes integration, for me, the key of integration is choice. And that is what makes it painful sometimes, but that is what it's all about. But first, let's talk about integration in normal life. Because normally we just live our lives, we take our steps, we do our inner work, we read something that is transformational, and then just everything aligns. But we don't notice it too much, because the difference between our being before and our being afterwards is not that great. So we just have little shifts and integration happens. Still, the principle applies, which is we change something in our inner world, which means our inner world and our outside world is not in alignment. In the easiest case, the outside world just adapts in a beautiful way. Let me think of an example. Let's say you figure out some pain that you have around money from your childhood, that you realize that you have this thought of, I don't have enough, and you realize, well, that's coming from my parents because they didn't have enough, and in my childhood they always told me we cannot afford this, and therefore I had the belief that I cannot afford anything. And then you do some work, maybe with affirmations, maybe with a tapping, maybe with whatever your tools are. And all of a sudden, your boss just gives you a pay raise, or you realize you find money that you have forgotten, or you get an inheritance, or whatever. Like, your outside world comes together with your inside world, with is a world of more abundance now. And there's no big deal. Integration gets challenging when one of two things happens. Either when we change one belief that is in consistency with a lot of other beliefs, or with other relevant beliefs, and we create a basically inconsistent belief system, or when we just transform so much, like being on a retreat. Because then we have a big, well, different cases. Which one do you want to talk about first?
Whichever one's coming through quickest.
Okay, then let's talk about, let's say you have two beliefs that that are very, very close to each other. Well, it's hard to find an example, so let's start in the abstract. You let go of a lot of, or either a lot of, or some deep beliefs that have a lot of impact, but you still have other beliefs on the side that are then not in alignment with what you exchanged the old belief with. For example, well, second time this example comes up, so I try to explore it, even though I don't know how it works. For example, you work a lot on your worthiness, but not on your self-love. But worthiness and self-love are kind of two sides of the same coin. So let's assume that you work a lot on your self-love and not on your worthiness. And now you're kind of inconsistent. Then you will create the reality, the universe will create the reality for you, which is you, that will make you look at your worthiness. And that is probably by pushing unworthiness in your face. And that can be very uncomfortable, let's say. But in the end, it is just an invitation to either look at the unworthiness and let that go too, or throw out the self-love again, so that you're back into consistency. So when you have worked on your self-love and you're confronted with a lot of unworthiness from the universe, where just people tell you that you're not worth anything and whatever. And then you can choose to take that in, create some self-hate for yourself throughout the self-love, so you're back in consistency and it will be gone. Or you realize, okay, this is just something where I can choose that I'm not going in with this, that I'm just doing my work, that I'm not accepting this, and then you move through it. And that can be painful. That can seem painful in the sense of you are confronted with something that you don't like to see.
Mm.
But in the end, the function is just to give you choice in order to throw out what is not serving you and is connected with what you've already thrown out, or to go back to the old consistent state, to your old world, basically, which is always a choice in integration. Like integration means, okay, you have changed, but your outside world hasn't changed yet. You can always choose to go back. You can always choose to realign, which is also what a lot of the work that we do on the retreats is about, is basically dealing with whatever led to patterns that you have in your normal life, in your usual life. And when you go back to your usual life, you still have those patterns. Like the outside world hasn't magically transformed, but now you have choice. Now the patterns are not, I have to do it because I've always doing it. Now you're able to be aware, okay, usually in the morning, I switch on the TV, get my first cigarette and drink a cup of iced tea, whatever. And when you're back in your normal routine, your body might automatically try to do that. But now you have this moment of, why am I doing this? I could do it or I could not do it. And that's the moment of choice. And there's nothing preventing you to stay in your patterns.
The word that's jumping up for me here is attachment, as you're speaking, because it's common, at least in what I've personally seen, for people to move back into old habits. And again, this is one of the reasons I love the way that we work with our retreats, is that a lot of the kind of similar, not similar, retreat experiences which exist out there are very much you finish the retreat experience and that's it. And I think what you've just shared is really, really profound, because from what I see and when I've spoken with people and I talk to people about coming to our retreats and they share their experiences with me about other retreats they've been on, it's always very much, someone actually coined it the other day, the retreat effect. I feel amazing when I'm there and it's like everything is very clear, and a month after being back at home, I'm just kind of back to square one. And this is exactly what you've just pointed at. This is making that choice. Are we going to lower our resistance, remove our attachment from that which doesn't serve us anymore, and allow the new to unfold, or are we just going to run back to that which doesn't serve us anymore?
Yes, and it is like being supported on a retreat is important because the experience is just intense. And the support on the retreat makes a lot of difference how far you're willing to go and all that. Like, it's not that that's not important, but the value, like the question is, what are you doing retreats for? What are you doing personal development and transformational whatever for? If you're doing it for the sake of the experience, that's perfectly fine. Then you can go there and not care about integration because it happens or it doesn't. But most people who come to retreats have intentions to change their life. And then after the retreat, their life might change in many different ways, and not Like they might get different things than what they intended. But most people come to retreats in order to transform, but the transformation doesn't happen on the retreat. Well,
Mm,
it does in the inner world, but they're coming to transform the outside world. And the outside world will transform if you stay with your inner world. But the work that needs to happen is afterwards,
mm.
when you really have to take choices, when you have to throw out the patterns, when you have to. And it is the retreats that facilitate that, or it is the inner work that facilitates that.
Is the
And
catalyst for that, I think, is a good
it's a
way of putting
it's a catalyst. And of course, we can tell ourselves the story that if you completely surrendered, then integration will just happen by itself. But that's just a story that we can tell ourselves, because we usually aren't completely surrendered, especially with everything that is in our normal life that is filled with patterns and attachments and
it.
stories that we tell ourselves.
Yeah. And this makes me think, if I compare the recent retreat, the most recent one, concluded 2 weeks ago, and I compare that with my first retreats before the Pineal Tribe was established, but when, you know, our brother and partner Greg was holding smaller scale retreats by himself, and you and I went as participants, fell in love with the process, and, you know, Pineal was born not too long after that. But if I compare that first experience I had with now, at that point in my life, I was really, really out of alignment. I was making decisions which were not life affirming, making decisions which led me down paths of limitation, making decisions from a position of scarcity, from a position of really, really low self-worth, from a position of judgment of self and judgment of others. And it just meant that my life at that point, like I say, it wasn't in alignment. It wasn't authentic to the real song of my soul. And I remember coming back from the retreat, and the next 6 months were tough. The next 6 months were really tough. And at that point, you know, I didn't have around me established people as we do at our retreats now, you know, whereas, you know, after our current retreats, we have group integration calls, we all hold space for people to have one-on-one calls with us, to be there for somebody, so they have somebody who knows this process to connect to. But of course, back then that wasn't there. And I remember, like, I got back the first 2 days after the retreat, kind of walking around like Jesus, noble and you know, smiley and loving everything. And then the realization dawned that my outer world and my inner world were totally at odds with each other. And I remember I pretended to be ill. I pretended to have the flu 2 weeks, cancelled all my work commitments, and basically just stayed upstairs in my bedroom and hid from the world and played songs that I'd listened to on the retreat, and, you know, sat there telling myself how terrible things were, and really, you know, just ran from it, resisted everything from happening. And it was challenging. And I think that I remember the only thing that pulled me out of that was I've got a good friend of mine, Stuart from the UK, and he just happened to be pre-booked to come and stay with us for a week. And it happened to be after 2 weeks of me being in my bedroom that he arrived. And I remember with every fiber of my being, I wanted to cancel his trip, but I just didn't. But I just didn't go that one step to sending the message. And he arrived, and it pulled me out of this funk. And then I got to spend some time with him. But even after that, there was still this resistance. There was still this feeling of my life is shit feeling. I don't like the work I do. It's really, really unenjoyable. I don't like my partner. She's the worst person in the world, and it's all her fault, right? Like, I couldn't see appreciation or hold gratitude for anything that existed in my life. And at that time, part of me realized that that was probably nonsense, because I had a lovely house near a beach and stuff like this. So, like, why am I not grateful for these things? But I was just in complete rejection mode, complete resistance. And then, you know, it sort of balanced itself out a bit, and then we had another retreat 6 months later, and at that point, I just really didn't deal with it that well. And I say that, I realize now looking back that experience was essential, but it didn't feel essential or joyous at that moment. Now I compare that to now, where over the last few years I've really done my work, not just in retreats, but day in, day out, trying to face my crap, pull out this authenticity. And of course it's still work ongoing, of course. But I look at now when I come back from retreat, and it's effortless. It really is. Like the retreat we just finished, like I've had no difficulty with integration, and it's not like things haven't changed in the inner world. We've had many deep conversations at the retreat about realizations which landed. Maybe that's something for another podcast. So there were big changes in the inner world, but it's like the outer world that exists in my life is so much closer, closer to my true alignment, so much closer to the authentic theme of my being, that there's not a huge amount of shifting that's taking place. It's more, it feels more like expansion. Like it feels like there's very little for me to shed, and it may just be that that's going to come in the next month, and we record a podcast in the future, and I'm like, oh man, integration gets so much harder. Who knows how that's going to unfold? But it feels like there's very little to shed in this moment, and it's more about expanding into something else, filling a vacuum which exists in my life with things which feel really close to my heart. So
I
I think,
agree.
go on.
I agree that integration gets easier. And it's, for me, it's, no, it just gets easier. It doesn't mean it's easy. Like I personally had a wonderful, gigantic breakdown 2 days ago, which was hard, which I'm still dealing with fallout from. But the point I would like to make is, you and I, we've been on 5, 6, 7 retreats, or if we also count other stuff that we do, Joe Dispenza workshops, whatever, we have done our share of going deep and integrating. And with everything in life, practice makes perfect. Strange saying. You practice and you get better. And that's, from my perspective, the important role that we play as Pineal team in the Pineal Tribe after the retreat. The point is, as you say, after your first retreat, you got stuck in the sense of you were just pulled into your judgments of your outside world, which keeps it in place, and therefore you fight the surrender into it, and then you're just there and enjoy the pain if you do or not.
Yeah.
And that's wonderful integration, except it's not enjoyable. And the point is, it doesn't have to be suffering, because most of the suffering in integration comes from our fight of the integration. And so many times, just the right questions, just constructive questions, can shift a situation like this around. Like you had the luck that Stuart was coming by to keep you to get you out of that state. But it wouldn't have to be somebody who came by. You could just have asked a question with a competent facilitator who would then ask you some questions that would get you to the next stage and the next stage and the next stage. And this is exactly what I see as the value that we provide, that we are there on the one hand as still energetic container of the group that we energetically support. But whenever something happens, whenever a participant feels stuck or runs into a wall or whatever, he just has to reach out, and then he'll be supported with our experiences, with our knowledge about how to integrate more, and with our frames, what integration is and what it isn't. And I just noticed when you started talking, I like to tell the story. Integration is about choice, and you just have to choose. But in the end, that is a story to make integration easier, because as soon as you choose to accept it, the pain is gone. But it's not only about choice, it's about surrendering into the new you. And I say it's choice as if it's actually possible to choose the old. And it is in some way, but you will have to fucking fight to get back. Because
Yeah.
once you're more in alignment, to get back out of alignment is something that is so much against your higher self that it probably won't happen. But the point is, as long as you're fighting, like the way you told the story was perfect in the sense of your inner world had changed, and now you realize what you created before is not in alignment with what you are now. And that is painful. But then you have a choice. You can adapt, or you can suffer. And supporting questions for the choice of adapting, whatever that means, is what we are there for after the retreats and what is very important from my point of view.
And I agree on this choice piece and making the choice. I completely agree. Experientially, I completely agree with you. That feels really correct. And I think that the choice that's available in that moment, the true choice, is to start reliving the actions, the old actions which created the inauthentic world that we had. Now, again, those actions for me were examples of escapism, you know, not doing my work, spending my time with maybe getting stoned and playing video games, something like this, just distractions, basically. And there were points, you know, especially after that first retreat, where this is what I went back to. But it's so on point what you just said, because before that retreat experience, like doing those things was doing those things. After that retreat experience, doing those things was then there was a feeling inside of just feeling a little bit shitty. Like, what are you doing? Kind of like, you know, if you've just spent 2 weeks at a fitness boot camp and then you drive into McDonald's and order a Big Mac meal. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? What was the point of what you've just done? But you're so right. Like, never did I actually fall back into an old alignment. Like, never did I, or misalignment is the way to put it, an old vibration. It was just I made living in this new vibration more uncomfortable for myself, and created turmoil and friction and conflict. However, if I look at that period, the outer world still changed. It still shifted around to this new alignment, and I still came back to my work and fell off again. And I came back to my work, and so there was this toing and froing. But the outer world still shifted. Things still evolved. Things still changed, and so much so that every kind of 6 months or so, my life looks entirely different to what it was 6 months prior. So I think that's incredibly accurate, at least from my experience anyway.
And the one thing I would like to underline is integration happens. Like, it's not your choice not to integrate. Integration always happens. And it might even be that the stuff that you did was perfect in terms of integrating, in the sense of, well, if your body just needed a lot of rest, maybe the best thing to do is stay in bed and play computer games. But the thing that can be supported is you chose to suffer through it because you are telling yourself, what the fuck am I doing? I'm doing nothing.
Yes. It reminds me of a conversation that you and I had and I've mentioned this conversation in a previous podcast. I was in Warsaw. I was going through something really challenging in my life. I was very upset, very emotional. And we spoke on the phone. I remember you saying to me, it's okay to run away sometimes. It's okay to hide sometimes. That's what you need to do in the moment. I remember that stayed with me because I don't like it when I run away, because I love it when I'm in the flow of what my life is. Like, it's amazing. I love that creative space. But especially in this last year or so, when there's been moments of feeling like I want to disconnect and run, going into like extreme introvert, just like honoring that, being conscious that I don't get stuck in it for like 6 months and I'm like, bloody hell, where have I been? But just kind of honoring it and seeing and understanding and respecting and appreciating that, you know, we can see cycles everywhere in our reality. We can see that you know, whether it's the cycles of the weather, the conscious, unconscious, day and night, whatever it is, life and death. We live in a cyclical reality to some degree, and there are moments when I want to go in and I want to hide, and they don't diminish the moments when I want to come out and sing my song to the world. If anything, they punctuate it. They almost pull back the elastic band while I'm in there, and then when I let go and I come out, it's like I have this great velocity about what I'm doing. So yeah, you know, I think that's a really nice bit of framing.
I don't like the term running away, because running away is something that I would never advise. But there is an awareness when it's not the time to deal with something.
Mm.
And if you're aware that it's not the time to deal with something, then retreating can be very beneficial. But then you still have the choice, retreating and hating yourself for it, or retreating and loving yourself for it. And if you retreat and love yourself for it, it is like 500 times more effective than if you retreat and hate yourself for it.
That's so true. That's so true. Again, because there's I actually made a video on Instagram and YouTube about this a little while ago about, and it's actually called Cycles. And in that video, I say that, you know, I used to judge myself for those moments, because when I'm let's call it introvert and extrovert. Yeah, you know, it's just an easy way to define these things. When I'm in my extrovert state, like, I create wonder. Like, I create absolute magic in the things that I'm doing. Like, I just, things just expand for me in the most amazing way, and I'm the best version of myself for my friends, for my family, for anyone around me. And it's been the pattern of my life that when I would go into these introvert states, I would see it as weakness. I would see it as not being good enough, as a sign that when I'm in my extrovert, actually that's not authentic. And it would create this sense of like imposter syndrome. Whereas I think, you know, which one am I? Then I started thinking, do I have like bipolar disorder? Like, am I schizophrenic? Because I had no model of understanding for these things. And then, you know, I just went into this hypochondriac victim mentality in moments where I just saw it as being broken, essentially, and dysfunctional or malfunctional. And yeah, when you say it's like, it's 500 times more powerful, it really, really is. Like, I had a feeling of wanting to retreat a few weeks before the Pineal Retreat, using that word a bit too much, and go into my introvert state like a few weeks before. But I understood it, and I went into it, and I wasn't really speaking to anyone. I wasn't really returning calls. My friend Tony on the island, our friend Tony on the island, he always says he can tell when I'm in the introvert state, because I very rarely turn up to anything, and if I do, I'm late. Like, because he gets that it's such a pull for me to get there, right? It's like I'm walking, yes, walking through honey kind of thing, rather than walking cleanly. But I just loved myself in this state. I was no judgment. No self-judgment at all. No implication of shame or not being worthy or being less than. I just kind of observed the state and started trying to learn what was going on and observe what was going on. And it really felt like a settling down, like a recalibration. Like when I'd been in this extrovert state, wanting to go and run around, take on the world and speak to everybody and do whatever, that I had taken things up inside to a certain point, that then to retreat into the introvert state was kind of letting the dust settle, letting things get into a settled, balanced position again, to then go out there and shake it all up again. And it was lovely. I'm kind of looking forward to the next one. I'm not going to force it, but I'm looking forward to disappearing down my rabbit hole again, or my foxhole, so to speak. Um, yeah, really, really beautiful. Is there anything that's coming up for you?
No,
Okay.
maybe maybe this is another point that we could explicitly make explicit. Um, there's no right or wrong way to integrate.
Mm.
Like, one thing that we sometimes say at the retreat is it's important to stay in the high vibration, yada, yada, yada. And it's good to set the intention, because being in high vibration is just feels better and is fun and all that. So it might deepen the experience. But as in medicine journeys, everybody, you don't get what you want, you get what you need. And sometimes if you created a lot of change, then it might feel that the world is crashing over you, and there can be a lot of pain released in the adjustments of your world. And that's not bad. That's just how change sometimes happens. And there might be people who integrate and just realize, well, there's a pattern, I don't need that anymore. There's a pattern, I don't need that anymore. And it just feels beautiful. And you see the world with new eyes, and you realize how it shifts and changes, and how you magically become a new person in your reality. And that's perfectly fine too.
Mm.
And if integration means that you have to retreat a lot and cry a lot and spend a lot of time in sadness and anger because there's still a lot that needs to come out, for example, that's perfectly fine too. Like, there's no point in judging the integration that happens. There is a point in reaching out and asking questions so that you can be asked questions if there's a way to make it easier for you, or faster or nicer or more effective or whatever. But whatever happens, it's never wrong.
Mm.
And also, one thing that I've learned is there's no point in asking the question if the integration is going right, if I'm getting the benefits of the retreat during the integration or whatever. Like, when I look back at my retreat journey, it's like after each retreat, I can see that my life took a different direction,
Mhm.
but I can only see it in hindsight. I cannot see it experientially during the time. Like, this is what I love about our consistent pattern of having a retreat every 6 months, because when I'm at the next retreat, or when I'm preparing for the next retreat, then it's time to look back and see what actually happened in the last 6 months and how that is different to whatever happened before.
Mm. Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. I think I'm complete for now on this topic. It feels like it's something that maybe we'll explore again. I can't see how we'll explore it again, which is why I feel complete for now. But it feels like we will at some point. So I look forward to that. As always, my dear friend, thank you for another wonderful conversation. Very beautiful. And thank you if you're watching or listening for joining us. If you're watching on YouTube, it would be amazing if you could click that little like button and subscribe to the channel. We are going to be releasing podcasts, and not just podcasts on the YouTube channel, but different types of video content as well, which we think is really going to resonate with you. So be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can be kept up to date on those things. If you are listening to this on any of the podcast platforms, Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, there's a couple more in there as well, then be sure just to click the follow button again so you can be kept up to date with anything that we're releasing and putting out there. And if it resonates with you what we discussed today, or indeed any of the things that we discussed on previous podcasts, feel free to share this. If you know somebody, for example, in the context of this conversation, that is going through some type of integration, going through some type of realignment of the inner and outer world, whether you perceive them to be struggling with it or doing amazingly well with it, please do share this with them, because just one small insight can really help the process and help somebody to stop resisting that intensity, because we know, as wonderful Björn explained very beautifully in a retreat in Tenerife, pain is just intensity that we're resisting, so if we can help somebody to lower that resistance just with a small insight shared, that's amazing. So it'd be great if that resonates to share this with your people. And I think that's all I have to say. Is there anything I've missed, Björn?
No, everything's wonderful.
Spectacular. Okay. There is one thing I missed. Our website is Pineal, pineal.org. We have information on there about our forthcoming retreats. So if it resonates with you to find out a bit more about what we do, go to the website. There's a way that you can click to contact us, and one of our team will be in contact with you. And if you want to tune in a bit more to kind of who we are as individuals, myself and our partner, Alex Finley, we actually are quite vocal on Instagram. So you can kind of check in and see the way our minds work. And Alex, you can search Orson Boon, ORSONBOON. And my name on there is Pineal_Nick. And again, you can reach out to either of us on that platform as well. So until next time, magical ones, have a beautiful day, week, and month, and we will see you very soon.